Hey everyone, today I'm going to show you how to make this beautiful scarf using a knitting machine. It's made from 3 tubes and comes together in just a few hours. You can even finish it in a day. It has a really elegant look, and because it's double layered, it's extra warm too. The pattern I'll show you today makes a scarf that's about 76 inches long and 9 inches wide, but you can easily adjust it to fit whatever length you prefer. And just a heads up, I'm using a 22-pin knitting machine for this project. If you enjoy craft tutorials like crochet, knitting, and sewing, make sure to like this video, subscribe, and click that notification bell so you don't miss any future projects. And if you have any questions along the way, feel free to drop them in the comments. I would love to help. This scarf project was actually adapted from a video pattern I saw by the creator Koala Knits and Knacks. In her video, she made a beautiful baby blanket using a knitting machine, and it really inspired me. I'll link to her full video tutorial down below. Definitely go check out her work, it's really cool. Alright, let's get started. For this project, you'll need a 22-pin knitting machine. I'm using the Addi Express Professional. You'll also need about 3 skeins of a medium weight, size 4 yarn, which comes out approximately to 520 yards. I like to calculate for extra. It's always good to have some leftovers in case of mistakes, but that's just me. For this scarf, I used Hobby Lobby's Easygoing yarn in the colors Frosting and Egyptian Sandstone. You'll also need scissors, a crochet hook, I used a 4mm, and the Addi tool that comes with the machine. It's super helpful for fixing drop stitches and skip stitches. Finally, you'll need a darning needle and plenty of stitch markers. In my opinion, the more stitch markers the better. They make the assembly process so much easier. Lastly, I highly recommend using waste yarn to cast on and off your knitting machine. It makes the assembly process so much easier later on. You'll only need enough waste yarn for about 8 rows, just enough to start and finish each tube. And definitely use colors that contrast with your scarf yarn. You don't want the waste yarn blending in and making it hard to see, so pick something really different from your main colors to keep it simple. Okay, enough talking. Let's start making the scarf. First, cast on using your contrasting color waste yarn. Remember, always add your yarn right before the first black needle. This helps all your color changes line up neatly. Weave the waste yarn by going under and over the needles, alternating as you go, and stop when you get back to the first black needle. Also, in a minute, you'll see my yarn color change on the Addi. The pink yarn started to give me some real problems, so I switched to white, but the instructions are still the same. Put the yarn in the yarn holder and crank normally for about 8 rows. When you reach the first black needle again, stop. Cut the waste yarn and place the tail of that into the center of the machine. Now, reset your row counter. It's really important to only count the rows of your actual scarf yarn and not the waste yarn. This helps you keep accurate count. Now it's time to add your first scarf color. Put the new yarn in the same spot as the waste yarn tail, right before the first black needle, and hold both tails firmly. Crank a few stitches to secure the new yarn, and then you can crank as normal. After about 3 rows, stop and tie the waste yarn and the scarf yarn together with a simple single knot. Nothing fancy, just enough to hold them together. Now, crank 25 rows exactly. This is key. Knitting 25 rows per color block is what will make all the pieces line up perfectly when we assemble the scarf later. And it will help us get that fancy checkered look. While I'm taking my time knitting, let's talk about the tubes we are making. For this scarf, each tube will have 14 blocks of color, alternating between the 2 colors you choose. This adds up to a total of 350 rows, and that's only counting the rows of the actual scarf yarn, not the waste yarn. One more tip, I always start each tube with the same color. It just makes the process of knitting the tubes easier. So for this scarf, I started each tube with the darker brown color and ended with the lighter cream color. Alright, I've skipped ahead a little and now I'm coming up on row 25. I'm going to crank all the way around and stop right before it switches to row 26. That's just before reaching the first black needle again. Now it's time to change colors. Cut the working yarn and place the tail in the center of the machine. Grab your new color and place its tail in the same spot. Close the yarn holder over the new yarn and crank a few stitches, holding both tails firmly, making sure the new color catches properly. Once you've cranked a few rows, go ahead and tie the 2 yarn tails together with a double knot. It's really important to use a double knot here and to give it a gentle tug. This way, the 2 colors stay securely connected, and you won't have any gaps in your finished tube. Continue repeating this color change every 25 rows exactly, all the way until you reach row 350. By the end, you'll have 14 blocks of alternating colors. You'll start with one color and end with the other, keeping that alternating pattern consistent throughout the whole tube. When you reach row 350, crank all the way around and stop just before the first black needle. Now it's time to cast off using waste yarn. Cut the working yarn and place the tail in the center of the machine and switch to your contrasting waste yarn. Continue cranking for about 8 rows or until your waste yarn runs out. And don't forget to tie the yarns together with a simple single knot. Once you've finished knitting with your waste yarn, hold the tail like this and crank the handle around twice. The tube should fall right off the machine by itself. And that's it! This is what your first tube should look like. Go ahead and make 2 more tubes exactly the same way, and I'll meet you back here to show you how to join the ends together. Now that all 3 tubes are done, I'm going to show you how to close the ends of the tube. And we'll start with the easier of the 2 to close. Undo the single knot we made. Next, we are going to put stitch markers in the last loops of the scarf yarn beside the tails that come out. So one will go right here, and the last loop is a little hard to find. It's right here on this side, where the scrap yarn tail comes out. These 2 loops are really important. They'll be the last ones that we're working in. Now you can grab your 4mm crochet hook and make sure the 2 tails are on the left side. Now we are going to slip stitch this tube closed. Starting right here, count to the 11th stitch down. And in the 11th stitch, insert your crochet hook. Once it's inserted, go to the stitch on its right. Insert and slip stitch through. Now turn your work and find your next stitch. Insert your hook and slip stitch through. Continue turning your work and slip stitching through the loops on the alternating sides. As you work, you'll begin to see a zigzag pattern starting to occur, and that's a good sign you're closing it correctly. Okay, we're coming to the last 2 loops with the stitch markers. You can insert your hook, remove the stitch marker, and pull through like normal. And do the same with the other side. After the last loop has been slip stitched, take the tail of the scarf yarn, which for me is white, loop it around your hook and pull through. Secure it with a tug. Now you can take off your waste yarn, and the ends of the tube will be connected. And you have a flat tube now. Repeat these steps on the other end, and I'll show you how to take off the waste yarn on that side because it's a bit trickier. Okay, we closed the tube and we're ready to take off the waste yarn. Locate the waste yarn tail. Go down a few stitches and find one of the top loops. Pull and the tail should come out. Come back to the top like this and pull through the top loop again. And once the tail is out, it should unravel like normal. Continue to close all the ends of the tubes, and I'll meet you back here to start connecting them together. We're going to be connecting the tubes, and this is what the connection will look like. It's a really pretty braid. On the correct side, it will look a little bit more open, and here on the back, it will look a little bit more closed, but both sides are really pretty and elegant. So grab 2 panels to connect and make sure the tubes are lined up so that they create the checkered pattern. For this part, you are going to need stitch markers, your crochet hook, and a darning needle. Take the first 2 tubes and hold them up like this. When you have the panels together like this, it's very important you look for the V's of the stitch. Look and make sure they are bigger on the bottom, like a bunch of greater than signs. This is key to connect them correctly. Once they are lined up correctly, we will be working in the bridges between the stitches. Start by going under the first stitch's bridge. Here, I'll show it again. Then, coming to the second panel, I don't go in its first stitch, but in the second one. Insert your hook in the bridge and slip stitch through. Now coming back to the other side, we skip the stitch we are currently working in and go to the next one. Slip stitching into that bar. Go to the other side, skip the worked in stitch, insert your hook under the bridge and pull through. Skip one, pull through. Skip one, pull through, working all the way down the scarf. Now to adding the stitch markers. Just so you don't lose track of the correct line you are working down, you can go down the scarf and add stitch markers to keep track. I don't show it here, but I like to add the stitch markers at all the color changes down the scarf, so I don't get messed up and have to undo my progress. And that has happened before. Here's a better view of me slip stitching, and you can see how I skip over the worked in stitch and go to the next one. It takes some practice, but you'll get the hang of it pretty fast. Keep going normally over the color changes, and if you knit the correct number of rows in each color block, 25 rows, the color changes should line up perfectly. Continue all the way down and I'll meet you at the end to fasten off. To fasten off, stop a few stitches before you get to the end and cut a long string of yarn. Continue as much as you can all the way down. The ending might be tricky, so you can do whatever you feel the most comfortable with. Personally, I like to finish as close to the end as possible. Take the strip of yarn we cut, pull it through the last loop, and then attach one side to a darning needle. We are going to sew under the top stitches of both panels. Here I go under the top brown stitch, then I come around and go under the top white stitch. Tie a double knot to secure it, and you can hide the tails within one of the panels. Make sure to go down the scarf a ways and then cut the tails. And voila, now they're hidden. And your first two panels are officially connected. Okay, it's time to add the last panel. And you can either add it on the right or the left as long as it continues with the checkered pattern. As you can see, I already attached my stitch markers and I'm ready to start attaching the panel. Make sure the V's of the stitch are facing down like this. Remember, insert under the first stitch's bridge, go to the next panel, start under the second stitch's bridge. Come back, skip the worked in stitch, and go under the bridge of the next stitch. Continue this all the way down. Continue to the end of the panel. Right here, you can see I'm making my last slip stitch. Now I'm going to take the tail of one of the panels, wrap it around my hook, and pull it through. We can leave this tail to be sewn in later. So here is the assembled scarf. The braids look really neat and the checkered pattern lines up perfectly. Next, we are going to go over how to tie in these tails. Start with all the tails of the scarf facing you. For the tails on the edge of the scarf, attach a darning needle. Tie a knot to secure it and weave it through the scarf. For the tails in the middle of the scarf, we will use them to close this gap right here. Attach a darning needle and sew both panels together. Tie a knot and hide the yarn. Also, very important, make sure you hide the same colored tails in the matching colored panels so they don't show through. Go ahead and sew in all the tails. Then I'll show you how to add an optional edge to the scarf. Okay, we finally reached the last part. Let's do the edge of the scarf. And this is what it's going to look like at the end. I use a 5mm crochet hook in the same color that's on these two end panels. It's 2 rows of single crochets, though the first row is worked a bit differently. I found that by working with a 5mm hook instead of a 4, it makes a big difference, as the end doesn't get too bunched up and it lays better. I'm going to start working with the right side of the scarf facing me. You'll know it's the right side because the braids on this side have slightly more open gaps. Start by inserting your hook into the first stitch and attaching your yarn. We will be working in these spaces here and in every other stitch. I started with a chain 1 in the first stitch. Next, skip a stitch and single crochet into the next space. Skip 1 space and single crochet into the next. Continue this all the way across until you reach a color change. To bridge the gap, go into the first available stitch, then continue skipping 1 space as you go. Some of these stitches are tight, but to the best of your ability, keep up the pattern of 1 single crochet and then skipping a space. Again, when you come to a bridge, go into the first space in the next panel and continue. When you come to the end, do your last stitch and then turn your work. Don't add a chain, just go straight back into the next row and single crochet into every stitch without skipping. When you come to the end, cut off a long tail and pull through. Tie the beginning tail and the end tail into a double knot, and you can hide it in the first 2 rows of the single crochets. Cut the ends and you are officially done with your knitting machine scarf. I really hope you enjoyed this pattern and found it helpful. If you have any questions at all, feel free to leave a comment and I'll do my best to get back to you. And if you made this scarf, I would love to see your version. You can tag me on Instagram or Facebook at Brush and Hook. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell if you like craft tutorials like this one. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.